The Great Hall of Nexus Prime had not seen such activity in 3,000 years. Representatives from 400 different alien species filled the massive chamber, their various forms creating a sea of colors, tentacles, and exotic shapes. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert hundreds of languages into something everyone could understand. At the center of it all stood Vex Tar, the council leader of the Zephyrian Confederation. His tall, pale blue form commanded attention as he raised his forearms for silence. The chamber fell quiet instantly. This was history in the making. Brothers and sisters of the galaxy, Vextar began, his voice carrying across the hall through. Ancient speakers, for 3 millennia we have maintained perfect peace. Not one war, not one conflict, not one drop of blood spilled in anger. The crowd murmured in agreement. It was true. The Zephyrian Council had created the most peaceful area in galactic history. Trade flowed freely between worlds. Disputes were settled through careful negotiation. Violence was almost unknown. But today, Vextar continued, his voice growing stronger, that peace faces its greatest threat. A species that refuses to follow our ways. A people who expand without permission. A race that brings chaos wherever they go. A chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Everyone knew who he meant. The humans. The species called humanity has colonized 47 systems in the past century, Vextar declared. They build on worlds without asking. They trade without proper permits. They ignore our carefully balanced systems of order. Ambassador Krillinox of the Deltarian Union stood up. His green, insect-like form clicked nervously. Surely, Council Leader, we can negotiate with them. The old ways of diplomacy have always worked. Vextar's expression hardened. We have tried diplomacy. We sent them our rules of expansion. A beautiful document, crafted over centuries, containing 47,000 pages of proper procedures. Do you know what they sent back? The chamber waited in silence. 3 words, Vextar said with disgust. Thanks, but no. Gasps echoed through the hall. Such disrespect was unthinkable. The rules of expansion were sacred law, followed by every civilized species for thousands of years. Furthermore, Vextar continued, they have been seen laughing at our sacred ceremonies. They call our traditional greeting rituals cute. They have shortened our formal names without permission. They refer to our glorious capital as Next Prime instead of Nexus Prime. The crowd was growing angry now. These humans clearly had no respect for tradition or proper behavior. Therefore, Vextar announced, his voice ringing through the chamber, I invoke the ancient right of war declaration. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Zephyrian Council formally declares war on the human species. The hall exploded into chaos. Some representatives cheered. Others looked terrified. War was something from the old stories, from the dark times before the Council brought peace. Vextar raised his arms again. We do not take this step lightly. Our war fleets have been prepared. Our weapons have been charged. Our warriors have been trained. We will show these humans what happens when they disrespect the galactic order. The declaration ceremony continued for another hour. Ancient rituals were performed. Sacred oaths were sworn. The war drums of a dozen species beat in rhythm. It was magnificent, terrible, and historic. Meanwhile, 47 light-years away, Admiral Jake Morrison sat in his office on Earth, sipping coffee and reading reports. The morning had been quiet, just routine paperwork about supply shipments and training schedules. He almost ignored the incoming transmission marked Priority, Galactic Council. Almost. Morrison touched his desk screen and leaned back in his chair. The image of Vextar appeared, looking very serious and official. Morrison had met the council leader before, during trade negotiations. Nice enough fellow, if a bit full of himself. Greetings, Admiral Morrison. Vextar began. I am transmitting this message to inform you of a historic decision by the Zephyrian Council. Morrison took another sip of coffee. Probably another trade regulation or some new rule about mining rights. After careful consideration and following all proper procedures, Vextar continued, the Council has voted to declare war on humanity. This decision was not made lightly. Your species has shown repeated disrespect for galactic law and order. Morrison nearly choked on his coffee. War? These guys? He had to replay that part to make sure he heard right. We have prepared our mighty fleets, Vextar was saying. Our weapons are ready. Our warriors are trained. We will bring your chaotic expansion to an end. You have brought this upon yourselves through your refusal to follow proper galactic procedures. The message went on for another 45 minutes. Vextar explained in great detail how humanity had violated this rule and that tradition. He listed their crimes against proper bureaucracy. He described the ancient war powers he was invoking. He even included a lengthy section about proper surrender procedures. When the message finally ended, Morrison sat quietly for a moment. Then he started to chuckle. The chuckle became a laugh. The laugh became genuine belly laughter that echoed through his office. Well, that's adorable, he said to his empty office. The blue boys want to play war games. Morrison composed a quick message to President Lisa Carter. Ma'am, you might want to see this. The Zephyrians are having a moment. They've declared war on us. I kid you not. Full formal declaration, drums and everything. Should I cancel my lunch plans? He attached the alien war declaration and sent it off. Then he leaned back in his chair and grinned. This was going to be interesting. The aliens had been peaceful for 3,000 years, which meant they had forgotten some very important lessons about warfare. Humanity, on the other hand, had never forgotten those lessons. They had simply chosen not to use them. That was about to change. President Lisa Carter was having a perfectly normal Tuesday morning when her assistant knocked on the Oval Office door. Amy Rodriguez, her chief of staff, entered with a look that was somewhere between confusion and amusement. Ma'am, you need to see Admiral Morrison's message, Amy said, holding up a tablet. It's about the Zephyrians. Carter looked up from the budget reports she had been reviewing. What about them? Did they send us another 1,000-page document about proper greeting? Procedures? Not exactly, Amy replied, trying to keep a straight face. They've declared war on us. Carter blinked. I'm sorry, what? War. Full formal declaration. Drums, ceremonies, the whole thing. Morrison is asking if he should cancel his lunch plans. Carter took the tablet and started watching the alien declaration. By the time Vextar was halfway through his speech about humanity's crimes against galactic order, she was grinning. By the end, she was laughing so hard she had to wipe tears from her eyes. Oh my God, she gasped. They're serious. They actually think this is how war works. Get Morrison on the line and call an emergency cabinet meeting. Everyone needs to see this. 2 hours later, the Situation Room was packed. Defense Secretary Dan Phillips sat next to Joint Chiefs Chairman General Pete Williams. Secretary of State Helen Clark was there, along with National Security Advisor Bob Turner and several other senior officials. Carter stood at the head of the table, still grinning. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the most adorable threat humanity has ever received. She played the Alien War Declaration on the main screen. The room fell silent as Vextar droned on about proper procedures and galactic law. As the speech continued, the silence was broken by the occasional snort or barely contained laugh. When it ended, the room erupted in laughter. They want to bring our chaotic expansion to an end, Phillips said, wiping his eyes. Dan, what's our current military status? Phillips touched his tablet, and holographic displays filled the room. Star charts showed human colonies scattered across dozens of systems. Each colony was marked with detailed information about population, resources, and defenses. "Well," Phillips said with a grin, "let's see what they're really challenging." He pulled up the real numbers. Every human colony had at least one military garrison. Most had extensive defensive networks. The mining equipment on frontier worlds could be converted to weapons manufacturing in hours. The civilian transport ships were all armed and armored. Current active military personnel, 47 million, Phillips read. Reserve forces, 130 million. Active warships, 12,000. Support vessels, 31,000. General Williams leaned forward. "And that's just the official numbers. It doesn't count the colonial militias or the merchant marine vessels." "What? About our production capacity?" Carter asked. "We can build warships faster than any species in the galaxy," Williams replied. "Our shipyards are designed for rapid expansion. We've been preparing for hostile contact since we first left Earth." Secretary Clark raised her hand. "Should we be concerned about their allies? The Zephyrian Council represents 400 species." Turner pulled up intelligence reports. "Most of those species haven't seen combat in millennia. Their military technology is outdated. They're designed for peacekeeping, not war." "In other words," Carter said, "they've forgotten how to fight." "Completely," Phillips agreed. "Look at their fleet composition. They have ceremony ships, not warships. Their weapons are designed for show, not killing." Carter nodded thoughtfully. "So what do? We can't just ignore a formal war declaration." "Actually," Amy said, "I have an idea. What if we respond in kind? They gave us a formal declaration. We should give them a formal response." "What kind of response?" Carter asked. Amy grinned. "Something appropriately human." The response was crafted carefully. Ambassador Steve Walsh, humanity's top diplomat, worked on the wording. It had to be polite but firm, official but distinctly human. The final message was exactly 3 sentences long. "The United Earth Government acknowledges receipt of your adorable declaration of war. We accept your quaint challenge and look forward to this educational experience. Please ensure your affairs are in order before proceeding." Carter read it one more time and laughed. "Perfect. Send it on all frequencies. Make sure everyone in the galaxy hears it." "Should we mobilize our forces?" Phillips asked. "Not yet," Carter replied. "Let's see what they do first. Maybe they'll come to their senses when they realize what they're up against." "And if they don't?" Williams asked. Carter's expression grew serious. "Then we'll remind them why humanity has been expanding peacefully. We didn't need to conquer anyone, because everyone was smart enough not to make us." The response was transmitted within hours. Across the galaxy, alien species received copies of both messages. The contrast was striking. The Zephyrian Declaration was 47 minutes of formal procedures and ancient rituals. The human response was 3 sentences of polite dismissal. On Nexus Prime, Vexstar received the human response with growing alarm. He had expected fear, or at least respect for the gravity of the situation. Instead, he got what appeared to be barely concealed amusement. "Adorable?" he said to his advisors. "They called our sacred declaration adorable? Perhaps they don't understand the seriousness of the situation," suggested Sub-Commander Yilmoth. "Then we will teach them," Vexstar replied grimly. "Prepare the first fleet. We will attack their outermost colony. New Boston, they call it. A single strike will show them we are not to be taken lightly." Back on Earth, Admiral Morrison was indeed having lunch when the alien response came through. A single battle fleet was heading toward New Boston. According to alien intelligence, it was a farming colony with minimal defenses. Morrison finished his sandwich and opened a communication channel to Colonel Nat Johnson, the garrison commander on New Boston. "Matt, you've got company coming. A full Zephyrian battle fleet." "How many ships?" Johnson asked. "Looks like about 200. They seem to think you're just farmers." Johnson laughed. "Well, we do grow excellent tomatoes. Should I let them land?" "Let them make their speech first," Morrison replied. "These guys love their speeches. Then show them what human hospitality looks like. Copy that, Admiral. This should be fun." Morrison closed the channel and leaned back in his chair. The aliens were about to learn their first lesson about humanity. It wouldn't be their last. The Zephyrian war fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Boston system with all the pomp and ceremony their species could manage. 200 ships arranged themselves in perfect formation, their blue and silver hulls gleaming. In the light of the system's star, War Commander Kethval stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Harmony, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. This was the first military action the Zephyrians had undertaken in 3,000 years. Everything had to be perfect. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we are detecting the human colony on the third planet. Population approximately 50,000. Minimal orbital defenses detected." Kethval nodded with satisfaction. Intelligence had been correct. New Boston was a simple farming colony, established only 20 years ago. The humans had named it after some ancient city on their homeworld. It should fall easily. "Open a channel." "To the colony," he ordered. "It is time to announce our presence." On the surface of New Boston, Colonel Matt Johnson was having his morning coffee when the alien fleet appeared on his screens. He had been expecting them for 3 days, ever since Admiral Morrison's warning. The colony's hidden sensor network had tracked their approach from the moment they entered the system. "Sir," Sergeant Kate Murphy called from the communications. "Station, the aliens are hailing us." "Put them through," Johnson replied, settling back in his chair. "Let's see what they have to say." The main screen flickered to life, showing the tall, pale blue form of Kethval. The alien commander looked very serious and official in his elaborate uniform. "Greetings, humans of New Boston," Kethval began. "I am War Commander Kethval of the Zephyrian Confederation. By order of the Galactic Council, this colony is now under siege." Johnson took a sip of his coffee. "Morning, Commander. Nice ships you have there. Very shiny." Kethval paused, clearly not expecting such a casual response. "You do not seem to understand the gravity of your situation. We represent the combined military might of 400 species. You are outnumbered and outgunned." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Johnson replied with a grin. "You're here to teach us a lesson about proper galactic procedures. Very considerate of you. This is no joke, human," Kethval said sternly. "Your species has violated sacred laws. You have expanded without permission. You have ignored proper protocols. The galaxy's peace depends on order, and you bring only chaos." Johnson nodded thoughtfully. "You know what? You're absolutely right. We have been pretty casual about your paperwork. Tell you what, why don't you come down here and we can discuss it properly?" "We are not here to negotiate," Kethval declared. "We are here to demonstrate the consequences of defying galactic law. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally." The transmission ended, leaving Johnson staring at a blank screen. Around him, the colony's command center buzzed with quiet activity. To outside observers, it looked like a simple farming community's administrative building. In reality, it was a military command post that would have impressed generals back on Earth. "Sergeant Murphy," Johnson called, "sound the alert. Looks like the farmers are going to have to put down their plows." Across New Boston, the farmers received the signal. In the wheat fields, combined harvesters transformed into mobile missile platforms. In the apple orchards, irrigation systems revealed themselves as sensor arrays. The grain silos opened to reveal surface-to-air missile batteries. But the real surprise was the colonists themselves. Every human on New Boston was a trained soldier. The colony's charter required it. The farmers were actually members of the 47th Colonial Defense Regiment. The school teachers were intelligence specialists. The shopkeepers were logistics experts. They had been waiting for this moment for 20 years. Sir, Lieutenant Tony Rivers reported, all defense systems are online. The orbital platforms are ready. Ground batteries are charged. Johnson smiled. The orbital platforms were disguised as communication satellites. The ground batteries were hidden in what looked like farm equipment. The aliens had no idea what they were really facing. What about our neighbors? Johnson asked. The merchant ships in orbit are standing by, Rivers replied. Captain Linda Hayes reports her convoy is ready to assist. Johnson chuckled. The merchant ships were actually fast attack vessels from the Earth Navy, disguised as cargo haulers. Their crews had been enjoying shore leave on New Boston when the aliens arrived. Talk about bad timing. 1 hour later, Kethval opened communications again. Humans of New Boston, your time has expired. Do you surrender? Johnson appeared on screen, now wearing his military uniform instead of farmer's clothes. Commander, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. We're not farmers. We're soldiers, and we don't surrender. Then you have chosen destruction, Kethval replied. All ships, commence attack pattern Alpha. Show these humans the price of defiance. The Zephyrian fleet began its attack run. 200 ships moving in perfect formation, their weapons charging. For the first shot fired in anger in 3 millennia. It was a magnificent sight, but it was also a complete disaster. The moment the alien ships entered weapons range, New Boston's real defenses came online. Hidden orbital platforms revealed themselves as heavily armed battle stations. The communication satellites opened fire with particle cannons. The farm equipment on the planet's surface launched missiles by the hundreds. What is happening? Kethval shouted as his ships began exploding around him. Sir, his tactical officer reported in panic, we're detecting massive defensive networks. These aren't farming installations. They're military fortifications. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted exactly 37 minutes. The Zephyrian fleet, designed for ceremony and peacekeeping, was completely outmatched by human military technology. Their shields were decorative. Their weapons were outdated. Their tactics were 3,000 years out of date. Johnson broadcast on all frequencies as the alien fleet died around him. Boys and girls, looks like we've got company. Time to show them what hospitality looks like, human style. The response was immediate and devastating. The orbital platforms concentrated their fire on the larger ships while the ground batteries picked off the smaller ones. The merchant ships revealed their true nature by launching fighter squadrons that tore through the alien formation like sharks through minnows. Kethval watched in horror as his proud fleet was systematically destroyed. Retreat, he finally ordered. All ships retreat. Of the 200 ships that had entered the system, only 17 managed to escape. The rest were either destroyed or disabled. The humans had even been polite enough to rescue the alien survivors and provide medical treatment as the surviving. Zephyrian ships fled toward hyperspace. Johnson opened one final communication channel. Commander Kethval, this is Colonel Johnson. Thanks for stopping by. You're welcome to visit again any time, but maybe call ahead next time. We like to prepare properly for guests. The alien commander's response was unprintable in most languages. Back on Earth, Admiral Morrison received Johnson's after-action report with amusement. 37 minutes? Matt, you're getting slow in your old age. Sorry, sir, Johnson replied. We wanted to give them a fair chance to surrender. Any casualties on our side? Farmer Brown sprained his ankle running to his missile battery. And Linda Hayes reports that her people missed their dinner reservations. Morrison laughed. Well, make sure Brown gets a Purple Heart, and tell Hayes the Navy will pay for new reservations. Sir, Johnson asked, what should we do with the alien prisoners? Treat them well. Morrison replied, they're going to be very important in the next phase of this war. The next phase? Oh yes, Morrison said with a grin. The aliens wanted to teach us a lesson. Now it's our turn to teach them one. The first lesson was simple. Humanity had been expanding peacefully, not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to choose peace. That choice was no longer available. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. The Great Hall of Nexus Prime, usually a place of calm deliberation, buzzed with panic and confusion. Representatives from 400 species spoke in hushed, frightened voices. Vextar stood at the center podium, his pale blue skin even paler than usual. The news from New Boston had shaken him to his core. His mighty war fleet, the first military force deployed in 3,000 years, had been destroyed by what the humans called farmers. Sub-Commander Yilmuth, he called out, his voice tight with stress. Report. The smaller alien stepped forward nervously. Council leader, of the 200 ships we sent to New Boston, only 17 returned. The human colony was not what our intelligence suggested. What do you mean? Demanded Ambassador Krillinox from the Deltarian Union. They were soldiers, Yulmuth replied quietly. All of them. The entire colony was a military installation, disguised as a farming community. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. This was impossible. The humans were traders and explorers, not warriors. Furthermore, Yilmuth continued, our surviving ships report that the human defenses were far more advanced than anything in our databases. Their weapons, their shields, their tactics, all of it was centuries ahead of our capabilities. How is this possible? Asked Ambassador Zexara of the Centauri Republic. They are a young species. They have only been in space for a few centuries. Vextar's expression grew grim. It appears we have gravely underestimated them. But we cannot. Back down now. The galaxy is watching. If we surrender after one battle, our authority will be destroyed. What do you propose? Asked the representative from the Rigel Collective. We mobilize everything, Vextar declared. Every ship, every weapon, every warrior. We will show these humans what the combined might of 400 species can accomplish. Meanwhile, in the Sol System, humanity's real military was finally waking up. The colonial defense at New Boston had been impressive, but it was nothing compared to what was now mobilizing throughout human space. Fleet. Admiral Carol Burke stood on the bridge of the U-East Liberator, humanity's newest dreadnought. Around her, the ship's crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing for the largest military operation in human history. Admiral, Captain Lucy Moore reported, all fleet commanders are ready for the briefing. Burke nodded. Put them through. The main screen flickered to life, showing the faces of dozens of human military commanders scattered across the galaxy. Each one commanded a battle group of warships that the aliens had never imagined existed. Ladies and gentlemen, Burke began, the Zephyrians have given us a gift. For the first time in 2 centuries, we have a clear enemy and a just cause. They wanted to teach us about galactic law. We're going to teach them about human warfare. Captain Tony Rivers, commanding the Strike Force Hammer, raised his hand. What are our rules of engagement, Admiral? Minimal casualties, Burke replied. We're not here to commit genocide. We're here to educate. Every alien installation we hit gets a 5-minute warning to evacuate. We destroy their military capabilities, not their people. What about their allies? asked Commander Sarakim of the battle group Anvil. Intelligence suggests most of their allies are scared civilians pressed into service, Burke explained. They haven't fought a war in 3,000 years. They've forgotten how. Hit them hard enough to make them surrender. But remember, they're not really soldiers. The briefing continued for another hour. Strike forces were assigned targets throughout Zephyrian space. The plan was simple. Demonstrate human military superiority so completely that further resistance would be impossible. Captain Rivers led his ships toward the Zephyrian outpost at Kepler 442. It was a small installation, primarily used for monitoring trade routes. According to intelligence, it was defended by a single squadron of patrol ships. Sir, Lieutenant Ben Clark reported, "We're entering the system. The outpost is directly ahead." Rivers studied the tactical display. The Zephyrian station was a beautiful structure, all flowing curves and artistic spires. It looked more like a sculpture than a military installation. "Open a channel," Rivers ordered. The alien commander appeared on screen, a tall, thin being with 4 arms and large black eyes. He looked nervous. "Greetings, human vessel," the alien said carefully. "I am Station Commander Velther. May I ask why you have entered our space?" Rivers smiled politely. "Good afternoon, Commander. I'm Captain Rivers of the United Earth Forces. I'm here to inform you that your government has declared war on humanity. As such, this installation is now a military target." "War?" Velther looked confused. "But we are just a monitoring station. We have no weapons." "I understand that, Commander," Rivers replied, "which is why I'm giving you 5 minutes to evacuate your people before we demonstrate why declaring war on humanity was a poor life choice." The alien's large eyes grew even larger. "You're going to attack us?" "I'm going to destroy your station," Rivers corrected. "Your people are welcome to leave first." 5 minutes later, the Zephyrian station was empty. Rivers watched as the last transport ship cleared the area, then gave the order to fire. The station died in a single brilliant flash. Where it had once stood, Rivers left behind a small monument with a simple plaque. "Zephyrian Outpost Memorial." They chose poorly. 2387 AD. Similar scenes played out across 3 systems. Human strike forces appeared without warning, gave polite evacuation notices, then methodically destroyed every military installation they could find. The attacks were surgical, precise, and completely. One dash-sided dot back on Nexus Prime, the reports came in like hammer blows. 3 systems, 12 installations, all destroyed in a single day. The humans had lost exactly 0 ships. How? Vexstar demanded. How are they doing this? Their technology is beyond our understanding, Yilmith reported. Their ships are faster, their weapons are more powerful, their defenses are impenetrable. It's as if they were designed for warfare. That's because they were, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was Ambassador Drexel of the Andromedan Coalition, one of the few species that had maintained contact with humanity throughout their expansion. "Explain," Vexstar demanded. "You assumed the humans were peaceful." "Explorers," Drexel said quietly. "You were wrong. They are peaceful warriors." "There is a difference." "What do you mean?" "I have studied their history," Drexel continued. "They fought wars for thousands of years before they reached space. They understand conflict in ways we have forgotten. Every ship they build is a warship. Every colony they establish is a fortress. Every citizen they train is a soldier." "Then why haven't they conquered everyone?" asked Krillinox. "Because they choose not to," Drexel replied. "They learned that cooperation is more profitable than conquest. But never mistake their choice for weakness. They are peaceful because they are strong enough to choose peace." The hall fell silent as the implications sank in. They had declared war on a species that had been protecting the galaxy without anyone realizing it. What do we do? Someone asked quietly. Before anyone could answer, the hall's main screen activated. The image of President Carter appeared, looking calm and composed. "Greetings, members of the Galactic Council," she began. "I understand you're having some difficulties with your war. I thought it might be helpful to clarify a few things." Vexstar stepped forward. "What do you want, human?" "I want to offer you a choice," Carter replied. "You can continue this war and learn exactly what humanity is capable of when we stop being polite. Or you can surrender now and we can discuss terms like civilized beings." "You destroyed our installations," Vexstar accused. "We destroyed empty buildings," Carter corrected. "Not one of your people was harmed. That was intentional. But if you continue this war, we will have to become less considerate." A threat hung in the air like a sword. "What are your terms?" Vexstar asked quietly. Carter smiled. "Why don't we discuss that in person? I'm sure we can work something out." Ugh. Transmission ended, leaving the council in stunned silence. The war that was supposed to humble humanity had instead revealed their true nature. They were not traders or explorers or farmers. They were apex predators pretending to be sheep. They had just offered to negotiate instead of destroying everything. The war officially lasted 18 days. By the end, it was less a war than a very expensive educational program for the galaxy's most stubborn students. A Zephyrian surrender came not with fanfare or ceremony, but with a simple, desperate message. Transmitted on all frequencies. "We yield. Please, we yield." The message was received aboard the U's Harmony, humanity's newest diplomatic vessel. The ship was beautiful in a way that made alien designers weep with envy. Its flowing lines and elegant curves rivaled anything the Zephyrians had ever built. But every surface concealed weapon systems that could level cities. President Carter stood in the ship's main conference room, reviewing the surrender terms that Ambassador Steve Walsh had prepared. They were, she thought, surprisingly generous. But then, humanity had never been interested in conquest. "Ma'am," Walsh said, "the Zephyrian delegation has arrived." Carter nodded. "Send them in." The doors opened to admit a group of very subdued aliens. Vexstar led them, his pale blue skin somehow even paler than usual. His usual proud bearing had been replaced by something that looked remarkably like relief. "Council leader," Carter said warmly, gesturing to the conference table. "Please, sit. Can we offer you anything? Coffee? Tea? We have some excellent pastries from New Boston." "New Boston?" Vexstar asked weakly. "The farming colony you attacked," Carter explained cheerfully. "They're quite proud of their apple turnovers. The recipe is 300 years old." The aliens sat carefully, looking around the conference room with obvious nervousness. The walls were decorated with paintings of peaceful Earth landscapes, but everyone knew what the ship was really capable of. "Before we begin," Carter said, "I want to be clear about something. Humanity is not angry with you." Vexstar looked surprised. "You're not?" "Of course not," Carter replied. "You gave us a wonderful opportunity to clear up some misunderstandings. We should be thanking you." "I don't understand," Vexstar said. Carter smiled. "For 3,000 years, you've maintained galactic peace. That's an incredible achievement. But you did it by making everyone forget how to fight. You created a galaxy of sheep, and sheep need shepherds." "Shepherds?" "Protectors," Carter clarified. "Someone who can defend the flock when wolves appear. You thought we were wolves. We're actually the shepherd dogs." Walsh opened his tablet and began reading the surrender terms. "The Zephyrian Confederation agrees to cease all hostilities with humanity. In return, humanity will provide defensive assistance to any council member who requests it. Defensive assistance? Asked Sub-Commander Yolmuth. We'll help you upgrade your military technology, Carter explained. Your ships are beautiful, but they're designed for parades, not battles. We'll show you how to build real defenses. What do you want in return? Vexstar asked suspiciously. Nothing, Carter replied. Well, almost nothing. We want you to stop trying to regulate our expansion. We've been expanding to create a defensive network. Every human colony is a fortress. Every trade route is a patrol line. We've been protecting the galaxy without anyone realizing it. Ambassador Drexel, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. The attacks on human shipping last year. The raiders from the Vega system. They stopped after your colony ships began patrolling that region. Exactly, Carter said. We've been dealing with threats before they became problems. That's why the galaxy has been so peaceful. Not because of your laws, but because of our guns. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Zephyrians had been taking credit for peace that humanity had been enforcing. But you never said anything, Vexstar protested. Would you have believed us? Carter asked. You saw our colony. Ships and assumed we were farmers. You saw our trade vessels and assumed we were merchants. You never bothered to look deeper. Because we didn't want to see warriors, Vexstar admitted quietly. And we didn't want to be seen as warriors, Carter replied. We learned long ago that cooperation works better than conquest. But we never forgot that sometimes you have to fight to protect what you've built. Walsh continued reading the terms. The Council will formally recognize humanity's right to expand and establish colonies without prior approval. Human trade vessels will be granted free passage through all Council space. The Council will establish a joint defense committee with human military advisors. You're turning us into a military alliance, Vexstar observed. We're turning you into a civilization that can defend itself, Carter corrected. The galaxy is a dangerous place. There are threats out there that make our little disagreement look like a playground argument. What kind of threats? Asked Ambassador Krillinox. Carter's expression grew serious. The kind that eat entire star systems. The kind that view organic life as a contaminant to be cleansed. The kind that are probably heading this way right now. How do you know this? Vexstar demanded. Because we've been fighting them for 2 centuries, Carter replied. Why do you think we've been building so many ships? Why do you think every human colony is a fortress? We've been preparing for the day when the real threats find us. The aliens exchanged worried glances. This was information they had never considered. The good news, Carter continued, is that you won't have to face them alone. Humanity has been looking for allies, not subjects. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to save it. Captain Pete Thompson, the ship's commander, entered the conference room. Ma'am, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. What is it? Carter asked. Long-range sensors have detected unusual movement in the outer rim. Admiral Morrison thinks it might be the Devourers. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The Devourers were the stuff of nightmares, machine intelligences that consumed entire worlds to fuel their expansion. How long do we have? Carter asked. 6 months, maybe less, Thompson replied. Carter turned back to the alien delegation. Well, gentlemen, it looks like your education is about to accelerate. Vexstar leaned forward. What do you need from us? Everything, Carter replied. Your shipyards, your resources, your people. We're going to turn this galaxy into a fortress, and we're going to do it together. And if we refuse? Asked Yilmoth. Then in 6 months, there won't be a galaxy left to refuse anything, Carter said simply. The signing ceremony was held in the ship's main bay, with representatives from dozens of species in attendance. As Vexstar put his signature on the treaty, he looked up at Captain Thompson. Your species is unusual, he said quietly. You could have destroyed us all. Thompson's response would be remembered for generations. Why would we want to do that? You started this war because you were scared of us. Now that you know what we're actually capable of, you don't have to be scared anymore. We're the good guys. That's why we're so dangerous. The treaty was transmitted across the galaxy within hours. The age of Zephyrian peace was over. The age of human-protected cooperation had begun. In the weeks that followed, human military advisors spread throughout Council space. Shipyards that had built ceremony vessels for millennia began producing warships. Trade routes became patrol lines. The galaxy's sheep were learning to grow fangs. The final scene of the war took place in Admiral Morrison's office, where he sat, reading casualty reports. Total human losses: 0 killed, 3 wounded, and 1 sprained ankle. Total alien losses: 17 ships destroyed, 43 installations eliminated, and 1 Empire's pride shattered. Sir, his aide reported, the Rigelian Republic has requested human military advisors. They want to learn about defensive tactics. Morrison smiled. Send them our best people. And make sure they understand the first rule of human warfare. Which is? The best victory is the one where nobody has to die, Morrison replied. But if they insist on fighting, make sure they're the ones who don't wake up tomorrow. His aide nodded and left. Morrison turned back to his reports, already planning for the next crisis. The galaxy was finally learning what humanity had known all along. Peace was not the absence of conflict. Peace was the presence of enough strength to make conflict unnecessary. And sometimes, just sometimes, you had to demonstrate that strength to keep the peace. The war was over. The real work was just beginning. But for the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy had shepherds who remembered how to fight wolves. And that, Morrison thought as he sipped his coffee, was worth a chuckle.